fellow BNC League owners, the greatest fantasy league owners. This is your commissioner, Chris Doval speaking, as all of you know, love, and hate. And I come here to present to you your quarterly update. As promised, we'll be providing this at the 8-game mark, the 12-game mark, and even the final end of the season when we know who our next champion will be. Now, we had an exciting draft, and the last time we made this video was prior to the draft to select your draft picks. We had an exciting draft. Obviously, we got ranked, and now things are all over the place, so we got to know where we stand. So this show's going to have a first half where I give you an update on what actually happened, a little dramatic update. Then the second half, I'm going to preview some analytics that can prove what is going on and what is about to happen. So, what did we see in week one? Well, week one started off with a great game, a rivalry. The nemesis that used to be Mikey finally came back from the dungeons and beat me and ended my 11-game winning streak. It was exciting. I was in London. I was trying to set alarms to wake up, but I fucking lost. Mikey, you got the win. And let's not forget that Marcel escaped narrowly in week one, and now he stands at 4-0, but he got out by 2 little points against John. It's going to be a theme, guys, the John and the 2 little points. Solid win by Kev. Obviously, he got away from Carlos. Danny was our high scorer of week one, came out the gates firing, but NFL.com did say he had the best team. So, we welcomed the Rook also into the league, and how did we welcome him to the BNC League? With a loss to the Kid. But yes, obviously no Le'Veon Bell, but your week one started off pretty bad. Oh, and Rob scored under 100 points. Week 2, 1 yard. John, that happens to be you. That's all it took for me to beat you, was 1 yard. 0.01. Sucks, man. Or was it 0.1? Actually, 0.1. 0.1 is 1 yard. And that really did go bad. But Rob goes from scoring in week one the less than 100 to being the high scorer. You fluctuated a lot there, Rob. But wait, no. Jay scored less than 100. Let's continue that theme as we keep going. Week 2 wasn't really that exciting. But then we get into week 3. And Carlos got his first win, baby. The Rook got his first win with Le'Veon Bell back. And now we've got a league again, guys. Adrian thinks he sets a record at 219 that week, but honestly, we look into the historical books and there was nothing there because Dave actually set that record last year with a massive, I think, 225, 235, something like that. But no, Adrian, I know you were happy, but you did not break any records. Danny and I had an epic match, but all I had to do was sit cookies, and then I fucking lost. What can I say? But it was a great match, one that went, I mean, it's probably one of the highest scoring close matches of the season so far, and it was a great one. Kevin scored less than 100 at 71, the lowest score of the year, and Rob and Jay were close at 112 and 107. Have you noticed that theme going on, guys? There's a theme. Week 4! Week 4 was the rise of Marcel. We actually found out what kind of owner he is and what team he had. He came out and slapped Danny with no Andrew Luck. And we heard it, and we heard it, and we heard it, and he still hasn't gone quiet. As you can tell, he's a very excited owner at week 4. Meanwhile, Adrian lurks quietly in the background, also going 4-0, but with the least points against, which I'll bring up in the second half of the show. And John finally got his payback for all his close losses. He came out with a 2-point or a 1-point victory over Mikey. It was a nice victory for John, who finally played the right players and was really nervous on a Monday night with Russell Wilson going. But so was I, because Dave and I had a very good matchup, and Hasha came through with a nice 11-point outing. All it took was one 50-yard field goal, and it was great. Oh, and did I mention Rob and Jay both scored under 100? So Rob under 100 week 1, Jay under 100 week 2, Rob and Jay both close to under 100 in week 3, and now the both of them go under 100 in week 4. Again, the analytics shows in the second half, and yeah, sorry guys, your teams just aren't doing good in the first quarter. And that's my first quarter report. Little dramatic entry on what's going on, and not so dramatic, but just giving you updates on what happened week over week so you guys can relive the fucking moments and enjoy this season as we build this movie out. Man, you know we finished the fucking shot with me. Not this motherfucker. I'm your champion. Oh, damn! I'm your fucking champion, and don't you forget. I'd like to look at the divisions. There was an importance to naming the divisions, and in Division Blitzkrieg, Mikey's division, as he is our division leader, there is 1 4-0 team, 3 2-2 teams, 2 1-3 teams, and that is for an overall record of 12-12. Moving on to Division 3rd Army by Roberto Rodriguez. You like what I did with the Roberto? There is 1 4-0 team, 1 3-1 team, 1 2-2 team, and 3 1-3 teams for an overall division record of 12-12. So what do the overall records provide us in data? It says that within your division, you are playing competitively. Now, Division League play ends after week 5, but the one thing that we must look at is the skewed record. Now, within Division 3rd Army, there is a lot more 1-3 teams, while in Division Blitzkrieg, there is a lot more 2-2 teams. Hence, showing us that the Division Blitzkrieg is a lot more competitive. The owners there are cutthroat and demolishing themselves. So, fuck you, Mikey, for selecting this division. Now, let's move on to what's happening this year and who our top teams are to make the playoffs. So, beginning with the top team, Marcel, 4-0. Adrian, 4-0. Kevin, 3-1. Then Danny, Dan, and Mikey rounding up the last 3 spots at 2-2. And of course, myself in the 7th spot at 2-2 as well. But because of my points for, I do not make it. But let's look back to last year and our 6 teams that made the playoffs and where they stood at that point in time at 4 games, just like us today. We see that Rob, myself, Dave, Kevin, John, and Carlos all made the playoffs last year. But where do they stand at 4 games? Rob, 3-1. Myself, 3-1. Dave, 2-2. Kevin, 2-2. John at 3-1, and Carlos at 1-3. Carlos ended up going 1-5 and winning 5 of his last 7 games in order to make the playoffs. That's why you're my favorite owner, Carlos. Black Carlos, where you at? Obviously the famous Black Gate. But one thing that we really need to look at actually is the points for this year, because it's really going to put our season in perspective. So the top 6 teams in points for in the first quarter of 2015 are Marcel at 664, Danny at 632, myself at 553, Dave at 531, Adrian at 615, and Dan at 561. 565 actually, right? Now, flipping the script to the points against, because as always, we have to know how our opponents are in order to judge what kind of record we have. In points against, the top 6 teams, and I mean top 16 scored upon, are Marcel, Danny, myself, Dave, Rob, and Carlos. Again, the latter 2 being in a bad category because they are in the bottom half of points for, but also in the top half of points against. You see what I'm trying to get to? Okay, moving on to look at where we really are as a team and what we're kind of doing. I'm taking the percentage of points for to points against. So the difference in percentage of where you stand and what your opponent provides you and what you provide for your own team. Leading this category is, and like Danny's been saying, it's not about what you score, it's what the other guy scores. So leading in this category is none other than Adrian. You have a 38% gap between you and what your opponents are scoring against you. And second in this category is Marcel at 16%. Again, the gap between what you are scoring and what your opponents are scoring. Rounding this off is Dan Marino at 7%. Yes, you've gotten Le'Veon Bell back. You've waited for your team to come back. Todd Gurley, you sat on him. Yes, he looks great, but you've had a good quarter to you because your opponents are scoring 7% less than what you are putting up. So out of 12 owners, we've got 3 that are a positive percent difference between points for to points against. 9 owners are in the negative. That means 9 out of 12 have points against higher than their points for. I took the average of the entire league and I said, okay, what is the average of what points against are against you? We are at a negative 1.39 as the average. Looking at a pendulum, if 3 owners are on the positive side, at some point that pendulum needs to come swinging back because the people that Adrian, Marcel, and Dan have faced, need to start facing the other owners. And when these other owners face them, their points forward will take them to the next level. And I subtracted that percent difference that they had by the average. Leading this category is Jonathan, Carlos, Rob, Kevin, and Dave and myself. That means that we need to start facing these other owners. We haven't had the favorable schedule. That kind of data then leads me to this kind of graph. This graph will make sense. Let's put that on a graph since you guys like for me to illustrate things. We'll look at a pie chart since Marcel, I know your fat ass loves pies. And we'll get this pie chart and we'll say Adrian, Marcel, and Dan cover about 3/4 of all the points against, or the favorability of points against, since everyone's in the negative. That means that 3 owners have had a greater advantage over the 9. So what's gonna happen? Well, I'll show you. Let's move on to my red marker. We get this red marker and we say the average is about negative 1.3%. So we're a little skewed off the line if we were to say that this is halfway. Maybe a little bit too much more skewed. What needs those 9 owners to do? These 9 owners need to start making their way back to average. So what happens to you guys? Well, you need to balance 9 other owners when it comes to points against. Say that this is halfway. Maybe a little bit too much more skewed. What needs those 9 owners to do? These 9 owners need to start making their way back to average. So what happens to you guys? Well, you need to balance 9 other owners when it comes to points against. Good luck for the next 2/3 of the season. So, what I also want to bring up now is last season. What I did was that I took your 4 games this year, your total points, and divided it by 4 and said multiply that by 13. Simple math, guys. That's what I'm going to do to project your scores for the rest of the season. And what I did was that I took all scores, points for, and points against from 2014 to compare to this year. So how good are your teams performing compared to last year? I'm only going to name the top 6, but the top 6 performing better than they did in points for last year are Marcel, Mikey, Danny, Adrian, Dan, and Carlos. Now, Dan, I compared you to Chicken. We miss you, Chicken. But not really, we got the rook! Alright, now, the leading scorer of that, performing better than last year, is none other than Marcel. Again, we've been saying this season's been all quirky. Yes, Adrian just proved that he's got the higher average in points against. And now Marcel is proving to us that he has scored more points for than he did last year. So we look at 2014 versus 2015 points against. And that goes to show us that the guys getting scored on the most compared to last year are Marcel, Danny, myself, Kevin, Rob, and Carlos. And the guy's been saying it all along. He's got the damn bullseye on his back. People are targeting him, and he leads in points against compared to last year at 22%. It is Danny. All right, I took now that average of points against because I said, all right, last year, if you take the average of this year compared to last year and took that average, so an average of an average, I would come up with a number, right? Because we always keep saying it's what your opponent scores. Now, this average, you guys are gonna love this stat, is negative 2% compared to this year's average of percent difference in points against of 1.39%. So what is the data telling us, guys? Because the numbers never lie. It's trying to tell us that the most consistent thing that we can see is the points against average. It's what your opponent does. That is the numbers we're going to look at. So your average from this year compared to last year, points against subtracted from your average of that is going to tell me how far away you are from the norm. So how far away are you from 0 or the negative 2%, but we're going to call it 0 for this means and purpose. The top 6 teams leading that means these 6 teams are further away from the average. That means they're going to resort back to normal are Marcel, Danny, myself, Kevin, Rob, and Carlos. That means you are being scored on more than the average from last year. Who leads that? Who's the furthest away? Again, we said it last time. Danny. He's got a gap to make up. Why? Because other guys score more against him. Who's second in that? Myself. Guys, these numbers are not skewed. I'll show you the work. You can audit me. Myself. People want to score more against me. Well, second most in this league. I've talked to you about some data. I've talked to you about this year's Q1 performance. This year's in points for and points against, the percent difference, how far away you are from that percent difference. Then compare your points for to 2014 points for and your 2014 points against, and then took the difference, like how far away you are from that average. So I've gotten 7 sets of data. And now I show you the BNC scorecard. This is the balanced numerical criteria scorecard. Yes, I took BNC and I made something fucking cool about it. These criteria have given us a set, right? And what I did was I said, if you were in the top 6, you got a green. If you were in the bottom 6 of each one, you got a red. In 7 datas, there was gonna be an odd number and I could select who's gonna be in the playoffs. Yes, guys, I've got a method to my madness. Well, here it is, guys. The completed BNC scorecard. The balanced numerical criteria. Again, we're looking at the average of 2015 versus 2014 points for. The average in points against. Then I take the away average. So the average of the average subtraction. Quarter 1, 2015 points for. Quarter 1, 2015 points again. That percent difference of those. Then take the average and subtract it from the other average of an average of an average. Alright guys, so I'm lumping 2 sets of data, percentage-wise, and then subtracting them to come up with a scorecard. Now, sorry Marcel, the pie has to go. Let's add this all up, right? So, if you got more greens than reds, that meant that you probably had a good chance. You're probably gonna have a good chance of making the playoffs. And at the end, I'll come with my prediction. So, let's do this. Alright, so now we have it. That is the addition of all of our numerical data, the BNC scorecard giving us in green and red what we have. So, what do you immediately see? And what is my wild prediction? Here's your prediction, and let's take a look at it. Marcel, Mikey, and Danny as well have a 4-3 green over red in the scorecard, while Adrian and Dan have a 5-2. They are actually the most impressive out of here because we're comparing to last year. And again, Dan is using Chicken's data. So it leaves us with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 3 and 4 scorecards. That's how even this season has been up to now. Out of these 3 and 4, I look at who has the least amount of room to make up to get back to average. And actually, yeah, the least amount of room to get back to average. And who do I predict out of all this to get there? Oh, none other than my fucking self, baby. Last spot in the playoff because I have the least to make up in ground than these other guys. So, there's your quarterly update from your commissioner. This is a lot of data. We'll be using this going forward in the season to come up with predictions. Again, we can make this crazy, but I'm going to use these numbers in order to come up with our bold predictions. Wow predictions. Again, right now in the quarter 1, the way it stands is Marcel, Mikey, Danny, myself, Adrian, Dan. That's who I predict to be in the playoffs, because of past historical analytics in order to come up with this number. And yeah, guys, you have it. Now you know what you gotta do. Again, Carlos always throws a wedge in that because Carlos has come back twice before. Alrighty, guys, this is your 2015 quarter 1 update. Another 3 more to come. Enjoy the data, discuss about it. For the next few episodes, you'll probably enjoy this a lot more because you'll actually know what's going on. And maybe we can tweak some things. But this is the way it's going to be. This is the stats. And that's that the numbers just don't lie. In the BNC!
If you wish to have your idea submitted for the quarterly video, please send all inquiries to DNIEV001